This hourly segment brought to you by Unleash Your Wealth with Raj Shah and Rick Borick this Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. Learn more at scwealthadvisors.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So Peter Thiel sat down to have a conversation with Joe Lonsdale, another very successful venture capitalist. And Lonsdale is also involved with the development of University of Austin, Texas, UATX. So this was in part the nature of their chat. And I thought Peter Thiel's riff about elite institutions, thinking about Harvard and the Ivy League in particular, was a pretty good one. Take a listen.
Yeah, I think the caliber of the people is really high, and I've done a decent amount of lecturing, speaking at different universities in the last few years, and it's just striking how there's. It's very unclear what people are doing. It was a big achievement in a way for students to get into, elite colleges like Yale or Harvard or Stanford, but they're completely lost once they're there. The high school still has an organizing function for it, where the point of high school is to get into college. Yeah, and then college, elite universities. I think the organizing function 50 plus years ago was you were supposed to get into the elite in our society, and that has completely broken down. There was an Alan Bloom speech at Harvard in the 1980s where he started with this obnoxious framing as "my fellow elitists," because everyone at Harvard pretended to be egalitarian, but they were secretly elitist. And I think you couldn't give that speech at Harvard today, because there's nothing elite about it, nothing about forming an elite. You can't even pretend it behind closed doors or anything like that. And so for the next generation of people going into these places, they're just really lost.
For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined again by Andrew Klavan, host of the Andrew Klavan Show at Daily Wire, and you can also get his writings at his Substack, The New Jerusalem, thenewjerusalem.substack.com. He's got a new book as well, The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness, that is available on May 6th, but of course you pre-order it now. The Kingdom of Cain is Andrew Klavan's latest book. He joins us now. Andrew, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
It's great talking to you, Dan.
What about what Thiel had to say about the Ivy League, and you can't even pretend that they're elite institutions anymore. And it's not even that sort of general description, but his more personal one where he talks about, going and speaking at these places, and there's no sort of organizing principle, and the supposedly, next gen elites are lost.
Yeah, I think it's beyond question true. It's like the news hasn't reached them yet, but it's reached the rest of us. I think that the reaction to COVID, which was such a disaster, so complete with lies and cover-ups and censoring of the truth and accusations that the people who were telling the truth were the conspiracy theorists, while the elites themselves were conspiring to hide the truth and to damage the economy and to take away people's rights, even the right to go to church in the name of a public health emergency. Oh, and while we're at it, isn't racism a public health emergency, and isn't climate change a public health emergency? Revealed to us the fact that our elites have no clue what they're doing, and they're not on our side. And this is really important because, after World War I, Churchill remarked that the people who led Europe before World War I were not the same people who led Europe after World War I, because World War I had been such a disaster and such a mistake by the elites. But with COVID, no one was fired, no one was punished, no one was accused, but the people basically responded by reelecting Donald Trump, which not only said, oh, we want Donald Trump, but also said, we're not listening to you anymore. We're not listening to your media. We're not listening to your entertainment people. We're not listening to George Clooney. We don't care what you think. And that was a reaction to the fact that they had just boggled bungled this incredibly huge endeavor, destroying the economy, destroying freedoms, destroying people's lives. Old people died alone for no reason, and children wore masks for no reason. Yeah, and so it was a total failure. And now I think that bill has come due, and people are just saying, you're not elite. You just think you're elite.
Well, the other thing, too, is they seem to have, I don't know if it's willful blindness, if they're play acting, or they're genuinely that in the dark about what's going on at their universities. You have this, the Cornell University president just came out and said, well, we had no idea about this this pro-Hamas student on campus until recently. Yale Law School is essentially expelling a scholar who is affiliated with a pro-Hamas terrorist organization, or a foundation that is affiliated with Hamas, a terrorist organization. Perhaps is probably the more accurate way to say it. But it's like, so you have no idea who these people are and what's going on at these small insular universities?
Well, not only that, I mean, I think that the people, I'm less worried about those people, although we should be worried about those people. I'm worried about the ignoramuses who went out on campuses, elite campuses, Columbia, Harvard, and protested with those people, screaming for the elimination of Israel, the genocide of the Jewish people, having no idea what the hell they were talking about. And those people were schooled at Harvard. They were schooled at Columbia. They were schooled in these classes by leftists who had developed this idea of, intersectional power rankings that made you more moral if you had, less power, and all these things that basically lead you to evil, an ideology that was going to lead people to endorse evil. We see it now in the Democrat Party that is supporting gang members who've been tossed out of the country as they deserve. They don't know they're doing anything wrong. They think that people are going to rise up and call them blessed because they go and have a margarita with a gangster. They've been taught this at these elite institutions. They've been taught something that is incorrect morally, historically, ethically, in every possible way. And that's the thing that Donald Trump is punishing them for. See, they think, he's limiting our freedoms. We have a constitutional right. Well, you may have a constitutional right as an independent university not taking government money to say whatever you want, but that doesn't mean that what you're saying isn't repulsive morally. Right. And this is the problem. They're teaching our children morally corrupt ideas that are going to get them condemned when they step out into the world. And that's what I think Peter Teal is talking about. These people have been gutted of their Western values.
Well, there was also damage of property, and also, too, these no-go zones where Jewish students paid to go to school and they couldn't get into their classrooms.
Well, I mean, how much history do we need before we say, maybe we should treat people well, no matter what their, religion is or what their race is? How many atrocities do we need before you realize that when you're out there, there are no-go zones for Jews in your university? You took a wrong turn somewhere, The
other thing about it, which I think Teal was getting to, is how unimpressive they are. The students, because they haven't really been taught to think, even though they're good test takers. They're making a general statement. There are exceptions, of course. But the professorate and the administrators, we saw it over the last couple of years, every time these people are before congressional committees and they can't put together a coherent thought. And also this, Harvard's reaction. I mean, Harvard's reaction to the $9 billion in federal grant funds that were frozen, precipitating this litigation now. One of the headlines, Harvard researchers, funding freeze may force them to euthanize research animals. If you don't give us the $9 billion, then the animals get it. The rabbits get it. This is what you come up with? All these great minds at Harvard, and this is what you come up with as an argument for the public consumption?
Well, not only that, they have an example in Hillsdale where they don't take any money. They won't even accept students who have government loans because they don't want to teach what the government wants them to teach. They don't want a guy in D.C. to tell them what they should be teaching their students. And so then instead at Hillsdale, they teach the Western tradition. The abandonment of the Western tradition has been a disaster for the liberal arts. The fact that you cannot, if you arrive at a university loving a great writer, Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, anybody like that, they are going to teach you not to love that writer, but to see him as somehow a representative of imperialism, sexism, racism, whatever it is that they find in that work. And so they're going to strip you of your love of your heritage and take those ideas away. What they don't realize is all their values for equality, their values for freedom, their values for tolerance, they all come out of that heritage. They all come out of the Western tradition. So they're sitting on a branch and sawing the branch off themselves, and now they've just been caught. The only difference now is they've been exposed, and the reason they've been exposed is because the media was exposed as being a pack of liars during COVID, and now the little media, guys like us, are actually the bearers of truth. And so people are starting to think, like, wait a minute, why are you telling my kid not to love Shakespeare? Why aren't you teaching my kid Shakespeare? Why aren't you teaching him the King James Bible? Why aren't you teaching him the things that made us who we are? And then we can argue over whether we're fulfilling those values. But instead, they're teaching them this absolute nonsense that they concocted in fever pits of Marxism, and they think it's going to give their kids some kind of advantage in the world, and it's just absurd.
The Wall Street Journal's op-ed on the legacy of Pope Francis upon his passing, the subhead, one sentence, he championed the poor while favoring ideas that keep them poor. And that should be the epitaph of liberation theology. It should be the epitaph of leftism the world over.
It is so true. I mean, when you look at things like the sexual revolution, this works out fine if you're a millionaire or a billionaire who can cover your mistakes and get rid of your mistresses and things like this. But for the poor, this is an absolute disaster. And one of the responsibilities of elite people is to serve as an example for what society should be like. You behave well so that others learn to behave well because you're the one in the spotlight. This is a thing with celebrities, too, where baseball players or rock stars say, well, I'm not responsible for what people do. But in fact, you are. That is one of the responsibilities of fame and wealth and elitism, is to be an example to other people so that people can live in a good way. And instead, they have failed at every level to do that. They have simply indulged their own pleasure and their own little protected country that they live in. And they've left the rest of us to wallow in corruption and decadence. And it is just absolutely condemnable, and they should be condemned. And they have been. I think this is the thing. The verdict hasn't reached them yet, but the people have already voted, and they're gone.
What's your handle on Trump's, not just Trump's instigation of litigation? Because he wanted this. He knew he was making Harvard a deal that it could not accept. He wanted this. His instigation of litigation there, and how that's sort of representative of the way he is going to battle with these elite institutions that have corrupted themselves over the last several generations.
Well, the thing about Trump is you can never understand him by taking a snapshot of where he is at the moment, because he's a negotiator, because he's a deal maker. He's always moving towards something. And so you always have to sort of think a little bit ahead. This is why the press does such a bad job of covering Trump, is because he's actually, they hate to think this because they think he's a dummy. He's actually ahead of them. He's moving towards something. And you're right. He has coaxed these people into court, realizing that he only has to win half the cases to transform the country into something that will last longer than the country that they were building. He's always thinking, this thing with the tariffs where everybody panicked over the tariffs. And I was thinking, well, wait, where is he going? He's trying to get us on a footing with China so that China doesn't eat our lunch in about 10 years. And they're constantly panicking over what he's doing in the moment. But this coaxing these people into court is a good thing. He doesn't have to win every case. He simply has to set the agenda and make it clear that the president has certain powers and certain rights to execute the laws, and he's going to secure those rights through the courts. I think he's actually playing a very long game. I don't think he's playing 3D chess. I just think he's playing 2D chess better than everybody else. And I think that this is part of that game. You're absolutely right about it.
So what's as you're seeing this unfold over the last couple of months now, what concerns you as we head into the summer with some of the big items that he needs to get done, like extension of tax relief, that are not yet done?
Yeah, I think that is the thing. He's got a big picture. He was out of office for 4 years. I think that was a godsend. I think it gave him a chance to actually kind of rethink his first administration and where he was foiled and where he was wrong-footed by the establishment on both the right and the left. And I think that he's got a big picture. And, you know, the House has been doing a good job of getting some of these ideas through, but it's going to be a long haul to push this tax reform and budget reform through the Senate and actually get a bill out of it. But we need to do that, because without that, without the laws, everything is just an executive order that's going to disappear. But I think he's got a really good idea, an idea that we should be competing with China, not essentially getting our, you know, we can fight a war with China if they'll sell us the bullets. You know, we don't want to be in that situation. We want to be in a situation where we're producing the things we need, including medicine, including weaponry, including all the kinds of things we're going to need if we have a new Cold War or a new hot one. And so I think that this is a big picture, and I think that the Congress has got to get their mind right about this and stop arguing over every little thing and just put the big plan into operation.
Andrew Klavan is the host of The Andrew Klavan Show at the Daily Wire. His Substack, The New Jerusalem, thenewjerusalem.substack.com. And again, the new book, The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness, The Kingdom of Cain, which is available May 6th. Pre-order it now. Andrew, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Great talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Can you afford not to have effective video surveillance? Is your outdoor inventory at risk? Theft and vandalism can hit your bottom line hard. Stop these events before they happen. Monitor your business 24/7 with alarm detection systems. We prevent crime with live operators watching video alerts, ensuring your assets and employees are secure. It's not worth the liability when you can effectively protect what matters most. Call ADS at 1-630-844-6322 or visit adsalarm.com for a free demo. Alarm license number 127000143. Spending too much on security guards to patrol your property? With rising crime rates,